Hi, in this video for Math 2, we are going to be learning how to factor out a GCF, then factor the remaining quadratic trinomial. Today, just want to make you aware that for Monday, February 8th, and if you click on here on what you're going to do today, the handout that I use in the video is printable. So I made it and I typed in all the problems that you have on Delta Math to complete as well. So go to the instructions for today and it says print this handout. And it'll take you to Google Docs where you can then print. So, just file, print, whatever. It is 2 pages. You don't have to write a lot that's on the first page because most of the instructions are the same as the prior lesson. But I do have all these problems that definitely need to be done in your notebook and to make sure everything's labeled, okay? If you're not able to print. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my document camera. All right, so for today's lesson, it says that these problems will first focus on factoring out a greatest common factor, GCF, and then factoring out the remaining quadratic trinomial. So basically, this is the first lesson on factoring, and this is the second lesson on factoring. If you have not done those, look what it says right here. If you have not done those lessons, do that before this lesson, please, because I'm going to go through this as if you have learned and understood those 2 lessons. So just a quick reminder here. Let me write this in, sorry. That when you're looking at a quadratic trinomial, when we say a quadratic trinomial, we're talking about something that looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c. These quadratic trinomials factor into 2 binomial factors, but the significance of what you learned in the prior lesson was that if the constant is positive, and if you're like, what's a constant? You need to go back and look at those other lessons. If your constant's positive, you copy the sign of your linear term twice. So that's why you see plus plus. And then if your constant is positive, but your linear term is negative, then it's going to be minus minus. So we really, if our constant's plus, we have to look here and see what the signs are going to be. That's if our constant is positive, okay? So it says here, make sure you're using a pencil to factor. And I'm going to go through this example as notes. In terms of what I need you to write in your notes, I would probably write this down because this is the new step. We're going to first identify a GCF and factor it out. And that's for those of you that have to write in your notebook. So this should be like, after you put at the top the date and the name of the lesson, which is factoring quadratic trinomials, day 2. Put part 1, identify a GCF and factor it out. And you should have a quadratic trinomial left in parentheses. So if we take a look at this 3x squared minus 21x plus 30, some of you may recognize very quickly that, hey, 3 and 21 and 30, they're all multiples of 3. As in 3 is 3 times 1, 21 is 7 times 3, and 30 is 10 times 3. So when we factor out a GCF, in this case, it's going to be a 3. Okay? So this goes back to your GCF video. If you don't know what I'm doing, then you need to go back and watch that. So when we factor out a GCF, we put the GCF up front, and then we write down what we have left, which is the result of dividing each of these terms by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is an understood 1, so that's going to leave me with x squared minus 7x plus 10. Okay, so that's what we get when we factor out a GCF. We have to have this 3 in our answer, or it's not going to be correct. So our next step is, and that should say 2, sorry. I must have changed the number on me. I'll make sure it's fixed when you print it out. Next, determine what signs are needed. So all these remaining steps are exactly like the prior lesson. So the factors of A, and I'm going to just use a different color for writing these factors. When I say A, we're talking about this quadratic trinomial, which is in this form. So what's the A value? It's the coefficient in the front. What's the C value? It's the constant in the back. So that means I'm looking at this right here and this right here when I say what are factors. In terms of their signs, I need to then decide what will my signs be. So I'm going to look at my constant term, which is positive 10, and then copy that sign twice. Because it's positive, I have to multiply a negative times a negative to get a positive. That's why. So my factors here, if I say write the factors of A and C, well, if we're here with this trinomial, 3, and then out here I have an x squared minus 7x plus 10. My A value is 1, and the only two things I can multiply to get an understood 1 here is 1 and 1. For 10, I've got a couple of different options. I can multiply 10 times 2, or I can multiply, I said that wrong, 10 times 1, or 5 times 2. Your job is to think which combination of my inner and outer will give me this negative 7, just like yesterday's notes. So I am going to come down here, and it says place the factors in the binomials such that combining the products of your inner and outer give you the linear term. What's our linear term? That's our bx term. And all of this is from the prior lesson, okay? So I'm going to keep my 3, put down my parentheses with my signs, and I'm going to use these factors that I came up with. Well, 1 and 1, there's no other option than 1x and 1x. Remember that there's understood ones. My job next is to decide, do I want to use 10 and 1 so that my inner and outer come out to give me negative 7x, or do I want to use 5 and 2? And I think it's pretty obvious because we do have to add two negatives. We need to use the 5 and 2. Why? Because this would give us as inner terms negative 5x and negative 2x, which combine to give us negative 7x. So again, let me recap. First thing we do is identify the GCF and factor it out. I'll be real honest, in every single one of these problems, it's always going to be your A value. Okay? So we're going to divide every term by that number in front and simplify. Don't forget to keep your 3. And then we break this quadratic trinomial up into 2 binomials. We determine what the signs are. So that's, if my constant's positive, I'm going to copy that first sign, that linear terms sign 2 times. So minus minus. Why? Because a negative times a negative gives us a positive, but a negative combined with a negative gives us a negative 7. Okay? And then I'm just going to figure out right here, after determining what are my factors of my A and my C. So maybe you need to see me do that. For this particular one, A is 1 and C is 10, because there's an understood 1 here. And there's my 10. Okay? And then I just figure out what it needs to be so that my inner and outer come out to give me negative 7x. Okay, so my final answer is going to be 3 times the quantity x minus 5 times the quantity x minus 2. Now, step 5 here is to be sure to check your answer. And this is just like I taught you in the other video. It means I'm going to go to Y1 and type in my problem, and Y2 and type in my answer. So I'm going to do this again for you. So in Y1, I'm going to type my original problem right here. So 3, remember your x is located to the right of the green alpha button. Your squared is down here, x squared. So 3x squared minus 21x plus 30. Then I go down to Y2 and put what? My answer that I got. This is my answer. So I'm going to type in 3, left parent, x minus 5, and then in parentheses, x minus 2. So I've got it typed in now. Y'all should be using your app on your calculator to do this with me. And then it says check the table by pressing second graph. So I'm going to hit second graph. So that, again, that was my blue second button and then my graph button. And see if my Y1s and Y2s match. So look up here where it says Y1 and Y2. Do all of these numbers match? 30, 30, 12, 12. They all match. So if all the numbers in this column match all the numbers in this column for Y1 and Y2, then my answer is correct. Okay? Now, if I don't have a calculator, I can multiply it out algebraically. I can use my box method or double distribute here and then distribute my 3 to see if I get my original problem. But this would be my answer. So now I'm just going to move on and do like these particular problems, these 12 problems are the Delta Math problems for today. So we're going to do a few. I know, actually we'll be good. I'm going to just do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then your job will be to finish 5 through 12. So that only leaves you 8 problems to do independently. Make sure you are showing work as I am showing it. When you cheat and use an app, we can tell because they use different methods than we do, okay? And our methods are very efficient, and they are what you need to know for Math 3. So please do not cheat. Please just learn how to do it. Please join Zoom when you need to and ask for help. So we've got 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. So again, I notice that all 3 of these are even numbers, meaning they're all divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide out a 2 from all of these terms. When I do that, I get x squared. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and keep my x, plus 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now remember, you should be getting a quadratic trinomial after you factor. So it's going to be GCF, and then you should have something that looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? And then when you finish, it's going to say you'll have a GCF on the outside, but then 2 sets of parentheses. So this is what it should look like when you're finished. Okay? So I'm going to keep my 2, and then break up my quadratic trinomial into 2 binomial factors. I'm going to figure out what my signs need to be. So remember, if our last number is positive, we copy that sign 2 times. Only if it's positive. Tomorrow, we'll be working on what if it's negative. So that means I'm going to copy this plus plus. And then here for x squared and 6, which are my a and c, I have a 1 times 1, which will give me 1x squared. And for 6, I could either have 6 times 1 or 3 times 2. So since I only have one option for 1x squared, I'm just going to use 1x and 1x. I am again not putting the understood ones. Now my job is to decide, do I want to use 6 and 1? My job is to make sure my inner and outer come out to add up to what? Positive 5. So which of these can I add to get a positive 5? It's going to be 3 and 2. So I'm going to put 3 first, then 2. We talked about it in the other lesson, but it is okay to have x plus 2 first, then x plus 3. And how do I know if it's right? There's legit no way you can fail this test, which, by the way, will be at the end of the week on Friday. There is no way you can fail this if you check your answers like this. X plus 3 and x plus 2. So I typed in my problem. I typed in my answer. I'm looking at my table. Do all these numbers match in both columns? Then yes, my answer is correct. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Remember, you can always pause the video, rewind a little bit to hear anything you've missed. For number 2, my GCF here is going to be 3. They're all, how do I know? By the way, they're all going to be this 3. So, or the number in the front. So again, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 39 divided by 3. 36 divided by 3. I get whole numbers every time I divide by that 3. And then 1, 13, and 12 don't have anything else in common. So therefore, I know that's my GCF. So that means, remember, GCF and then quadratic trinomial. So 3 out front, and then what's left? X squared. Pay attention to the signs. This is a negative divided by a positive, which is negative. So that's going to be 13x, and then positive 12. Now, my answer is supposed to end up looking like this with my GCF out front and 2 sets of parentheses. If my constant is positive, which it is, I copy that sign 2 times. And then what are my factors of my understood 1 here and 12? Well, I've only got 1 and 1, but for 12, I've got a few options. I have 12 and 1, 6 and 2, 3 and 4. So for this, because I only have one option, easy to decide, x and x. Now, which combination, when I combine, remember when we add two positives and add two negatives, we're really just adding. So which of these will add to give us 13? 12 and 1 will. So I'm going to put a 12 here and a 1, or I could put the 1 first, then the 12. Again, am I correct? Let's see. This will be the last one that I check in the calculator. I'm just doing it to reinforce that you should be checking. If you do this on your test, you'll get 100. Okay. So second graph, do they match? Yes. All right, so this is my answer. I'm going to box that as well. Okay. All right, now if you notice 3 and 4, their coefficient here, your leading coefficient, is a negative. So that means I'm going to divide all these terms by a -2. How come I know it will divide? Because they're all even numbers, and even numbers are always divisible by 2. So my GCF of -2 go outside, but what you're going to have to pay attention to is the signs. Negative divided by negative is positive 1x squared. Positive divided by a negative is a negative 11x. Negative divided by negative is a positive 28. Let me make sure. I'm pretty sure, yeah, 56 divided by 2. Yeah, 28. All right. So hopefully that made sense. Negative by negative is positive. Positive divided by negative is negative. And you can always, guys, if you're like, I don't know, that's tough, just type in negative 56 divided by -2. Your negative key right here, same location on your calculator app. Okay? All right, so -2. Oh, we got to do our factors, right? Eventually, your brain just starts wanting to do it because we know that this is a 1 and 1. But what do we know about this? Could be 28 and 1. It is even. 28 divided by 2 is 14. So 2 and 14. If it's divisible by, if 14 is a factor, then that must mean 7 is a factor. 28 divided by 7 is 4. And I believe that is it. So remember, we write our two parentheses. We figure out our signs. That's going to be minus minus. I only have one option here, x and x. Which, no, when I combine two negatives, I add. So which two will combine to give me 11? 7 and 4. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's going to be 7 and 4. How do I know that works? Because negative 7x minus 4x, even if you just type it in, if you're not good with these numbers, no shame, just type it in. Negative 7 minus 4 is negative 11. Woohoo! That's our job, is to come out with this middle coefficient. So I'm through. See how I have my GCF? We want our GCF if there is one. All right, one more like this. Divide by -2. -2 is my GCF, leaving me with x squared plus, what do we get? A negative divided by negative is positive. Half of 32 is 16. If you want to use your calculator, cool. And then negative by negative is positive, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. All right, so -2. Now my parentheses. Factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Eventually you'll stop doing this because your brain will just do it for you. But until we're there, until we finish the next lesson, we've got to see these steps every single time. I want to see these. All this work, if I'm writing it, you need to be writing it. If I'm going too fast, pause the video. So again, our last term is positive. When it's positive, we copy this twice. So it would be plus, plus. Now, which factors will combine to give us a 16? 3 and 5 makes 8. 15 and 1 will make 16. So that means I need a 15 and a 1. And that's it, guys. So see how 15x, my inner and outer check, and 1x give me 16x. And that's what I wanted. So check. I'm good. All right, so your job now is to go ahead and complete the remaining problems. You will need to enter in these answers as well into Delta Math. Make sure you are watching the video, guys. So 5 through 12, and then submit all work, whether you've done it in your notebook or whether you've printed this out. Submit both pages if you printed. If you didn't print and you just wrote like the notes and did the example, that's fine. So let me just be clear. If you're just doing this in your notebook, you need to have this and this, because everything else here is from the prior lesson's notes. So minimum, put the title. You should always have a title on your notes. So title and the date, this stuff here, and then all of these problems worked out, and then your work for 5 through 12, which should look like my work. All right, good luck.